So let me talk about the story of the Buddha for a moment. So we're talking about India some 3,000 years ago. You are one with your people. You don't have bedrooms of your own. There is no private bathrooms. You share everything. It's kind of like constructing a house. You have an entire crew of people helping one another. No one can say, well, I would just want to build this house on mine. You can build a shed, but lifting heavyweight stuff to build this house is nearly impossible just to do it on your own. So what you're talking about, first of all, let me also say that the more industrialized you become, the more independent and the more of an individual you do become. You can be physically individual. Emotionally, I don't know, unless you've gone through a good amount of training. Now, so what you have is the Buddha. He loves his mom, loves his dad, loves his brother, his this, his that. He gets married and he has a son. He's very, very, very communal. Now, something happens that creates a crack in this dam. And it's something that all of us in this class have seen, have tasted. In fact, standing in front of you is that one day he goes out and there is this guy who's old. Now, the problem with the Buddha, not so much us, because once in a while you go out somewhere and you see someone walking on 3 legs. You know, they're holding a cane and they're walking, limping along. And you happen to just be in a weird mood and you look at them and say, wow, I'm going to get there. Maybe I should live my life a little differently. And then your cell phone rings and it's your friend, and then you party. And you smoke and you do whatever for the next 5 days. The story with the Buddha some 3,000 years ago is very, very different. I don't know how it happens. It's like all the other heroes we've talked about in this class, whether it's Malcolm X or Martin Luther, Jesus Christ, Muhammad. He looks at this old man and all of a sudden something about him cracks open. I'm right now 19. It seems that life spares no one. Soon I'll be 60. Your relationship with time changes. And this particular relationship is going to be a lasting one. It's profoundly intimate and intense. Unlike the rest of us in this class, whenever pain comes to you, you want to find a remedy. And the sort of pain that usually visits us, they're short-lived. You have a migraine, you smoke it away. You know, you're lonely, you sex it away. You feel like you have no money, you go to school for 4 years and it goes away, hopefully. When you realize that you're going to get old and your body is going to slowly betray you, you begin to question the sort of desires you want to pursue and you want to have. You begin to question the sort of advertisement your culture gives you, the sort of desires that your culture creates. And all of a sudden you go to your father, for example, and you say, Dad, I'm going to school, I'm saving money, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, I love my father, I love my wife, my kids. But once I get old, what's going to happen to me? Is there any way that I could fend off old age? And the father says no. So are you telling me that I'm doing everything in life and it's going to be futile? I'm going to look myself in the mirror and feel horrified? Now, the moment you have that crack, there is this detachment, it's tiny, from your community. You can talk to your father about chicken tikka masala. You can talk to your father about how much your wife is attractive, how much you love your kids. But all of a sudden you realize when it comes to old age, and you're wrestling with old age, with relationship with desires, with time, with futility of life, you will try, but your father will not understand. It's like hanging out with someone who's a drunk or addicted to drugs, and you keep telling them, you're ruining our family. They hear you, they just don't feel the gravity of the situation. And the relationship suffers a crack, and you realize you can do all sorts of things with this person, but when it comes to the most important aspect of your relationship, infested with drugs and alcohol, they can't hear, they can't listen, they can't make any changes. Now, most of us usually do well to caulk a crack. You go to Home Depot, you buy some tools, you fill it in, it disappears. But that's not what happens, because when you get old, you get sick. And that's true with anything. I mean, sometimes I watch my students coming to the classroom with their companion. She's new, having a lot of fun. She looks at him and says, wow, Brad Pitt. He looks at him and says, wow, Snoop Dogg. They enjoy each other's company. Just give it some time. Once the relationship gets a little older, a little more saturated, your feelings will go away. And then your companion, if he or she would inspire you at one point, now they sicken you. You want to have your own space. Now you become a bit more of an individual. Now, in addition to feeling Not just thinking about old age, but feeling. Remember, because we occupy these worlds, that's even more devastating. You think that the ideas we talk about in this class are interesting. Fine. It's only interesting because you don't yet feel the depth of it. Then you take the ideas, and you talk about these ideas to your companion, only to realize you're beginning to argue more. You see less things in common, and now you feel things. And you have a couple of options. You can either just get yourself high all the time so you don't think and feel about the stuff, so you can continue with the relationship, because we don't do pain well. Or you come to a point where you realize that your relationship with these questions, with these thoughts, and with these feelings are so intense that they just refuse to go away. And then he goes out, the Buddha does, and he sees someone who's dead. And you can think of it as you look at your companion and you feel absolutely nothing about them. It's called a marriage after a while, especially if you don't have any kids, where most often about 20 hours of the day, your conversation with your companion revolves around your children. If you don't have children, it revolves around, so honey, how was your work? No, tell me, how was your work? And after a while, that just gets old. And then you realize that this infinite well you once thought this person to be, it's only an inch deep. Then you say, I just don't want to be here. That relationship is dead. Now, the problem with this particular aspect of the Buddha's finding is there is no experience under the sun that doesn't get old. There is no experience under the sun that will get sick. There is no experience under the sun that eventually you look at and you feel absolutely nothing. It's dead to you. If that is the case, well, how should you live your life? Now, the problem with that particular stage of being is you loved your parents, but they can no longer reach you. You love your culture, but it no longer provides you with answers. You love your kids, but you say, well, if my own kid comes to me one day and says, Dad, am I going to get sick? Am I going to die? Am I going to do this? It's school this, it's school that. Should I get married? Should I have my own kids? As a father, you look at your child and say, the whole thing is a joke. It's like a trick played upon us by the gods. What the hell do you say to your son? And you realize for the first time you become an individual. Individual in the sense that it seems that 5,000 years of cultural narratives no longer work for you. 20 years of history with your wife no longer work for you. Parents who love you and you love them no longer work for you. You become an individual, but you become a dysfunctional individual. You have no idea the gift you have, which is your physical body, and the desires that this culture gives you. It moves you from point A to point B. The moment you truly feel and understand that it doesn't matter where you go, it doesn't matter what you do. You want to come out, you want to stay in the closet, you want to get a PhD, you want to do this, it just matters very little. In the end, all things will be dead to you. Where do you go? Now, because you have a physical body and because you have a Messiah called intellect, it comes down. It wants to find an answer. What are you going to do? Stay in the cave for 5 hours, 10 hours a day? You're not a pro. You're not like the Buddha. You're not like Muhammad. You're like Moses. You're just a tiny little kid in America with these lofty big ideas. You become a dysfunctional individual. Whatever you touch, it will die because you have destroyed the foundation of making any relationship work. You're watching TV, it's a great movie. Something about you says, I know I'm fooling myself. I'm wasting 2 hours of my time. Even when you're having joy, you mess it up. Whoever walks into your life, you are poison to life, man. Now, the Buddha walks away dysfunctionally, of course. He has some clarity. He thinks a little about this and that. He walks away from his parents. He walks away from his wife. Walks away from his kids. Walks away from a culture that has 2,000 years of stories. Stories give you life meaning, identity, relevance. It helps you belong. You know where he goes? He goes to religious people because they hold the key. All of us will do that. You're divorcing, it's tough. You read a book. You have cancer, well, you talk to doctors. You're failing a class, you talk to your instructors. Something needs to walk into your life that you assume will have answers for you. He does that. Now that society has nothing to offer you, now that your parents have nothing to offer you, now that the married life has nothing to offer you, where the hell do you go? You go to those people who claim to know, philosophers, religionists. So what do? Well, you fast. You sit without moving your body in hopes of what? Finding a way out of this misery called life. I'm not talking about like marriage is cancer to life, or kids is cancer to your life, or work is cancer to your life. The Buddha comes to realize all of life is like cancer. One of the nice things about ancient cultures, Egypt, i.e. Africa, the Middle East, the Near East, these people have been around for a long, long time. None of them focus on a tiny branch of life. Their poetry, their literature has to do with every aspect of life. Oh, you're enjoying your kids, great, just wait till they're 5. Oh, your marriage is good, just wait till she gets older. And you realize that every corner they're telling you the horror story that's waiting for you. You know, here in America, what you do is you just focus on a tiny thing. And then when you fix this tiny thing, you realize an avalanche is coming your way. See, a lot of us are easily pacified with easy answers. Can I do drugs to get rid of my pain? Sure, go ahead, easy answer. How do I get rid of my loneliness? Well, fine, go on OnlyFans. How do I be happy? Well, let's go over there. How do I become rich? Go over there. How do I become over there? This guy says, 4. Okay, so I fast. Instead of eating 3 meals a day, I just eat a pistachio. That doesn't make me any closer to what I'm looking for. I want answers, man. It's like you're in a relationship, it's going really, really bad, and you're looking for answers, and the guy says, honey, let me take you to this fancy restaurant, In-N-Out. I don't want to go to a restaurant. This relationship is falling apart. Is there a way they can fix it? Well, how about Barney's? And that's what the Buddha says. Don't pacify me with stupid out-of-body experiences. Are drugs good or bad? These are stupid things to talk about. Is there a way to live in life without being pushed around by it every minute? There are no answers. When I say there are no answers, you must come to this place where you realize you've read all these books. They mean nothing. You've had all these ideas. They mean nothing. You have lots of friends with whom you sit and you have intellectual conversations. They mean nothing. You need to be intellectually poor, man, homeless. There comes a point where he says, you can't run away from life. You can't escape life. See, up to this point, he's still a very, 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 very profoundly dysfunctional human being. He has nothing to offer people. No people has anything to offer him. He has nothing to offer the culture, and the culture has nothing to offer him. Talk about being lonely. خلوت در انجمن. زمن بشنوی پیر آموزگار مکن تکیه بر گردش روزگار که این منزل درد و جای غم است در این دامگه شادمانی کم است. This is a trap, life is, that all it creates is pain and sorrow. You'll have moments of joy just once in a year for only a second. Why promise anyone success or happiness? And that's what Buddhism is. He comes out. And what he understands is America is all about getting rid of suffering and pain and dysfunction. And the Buddha will come out and say, if you're born, welcome to the cradle of misery. For the first time, what you have is a man who knows how to think. And he knows how to think because of the pressure that he's lived in and under and with for 20 years. You have no idea what it means to love your father but walk away from him. You have no idea what it means to love your wife and your son and yet look at them and feel nothing. You want to feel something, the amount of shame and guilt and remorse that you have. See, here people have nobody. And because they're born to have nobody, they're grown to be a beast. They have to just take care of themselves from a very young age. There are lots of complications, social issues, political issues, financial issues that make people in this way. The Buddha has everything. He walks away, not because he doesn't like them, he loves them. They no longer give him what he's looking for, answers to the big questions of life. When he comes back, now you have a healthy individual. You have someone who is autonomous, autonomos, a law unto oneself. He doesn't tell you go read Hinduism. He doesn't talk about Plato's allegory of the cave. He says, I have looked at life the way Moses looked at God. And what I see is that life is nothing but a set of advertisements coming your way. With every advertisement comes a desire. With every desire comes poverty. With every poverty, you journey towards removing this poverty. Then you have it. Then you realize, I have it, but I no longer want it. Then you have another poverty. And that's what you have. This is the cave within a cave within a cave. And so what you have is a man who comes to realize, look, don't run away from life. You can't. Just know how desires come about. Just know how desires manipulate you, how they govern you, how they make you suffer, and how in the end they will abandon you and you'll feel empty. The only thing you can do is the following. Look yourself in the mirror and realize you're 30. You're getting older, uglier, smellier. Go out there. Find yourself a companion who has a relatively good foundation. They've gone to school, they're good to their parents, they're good to their bodies. Hang out with them. You hang out with them because you know you don't want to sit home and eat food alone, watch movies alone, get old alone, get sick alone. And in time, you won't be able to love them. Those capacities are removed from you. Once you realize that life has nothing to offer you, you will lose the ability to love. At least love in the romantic way. Love in the responsible way is a different story. Parents cease to love their kids. They just become responsible for their kids. With every new relationship, it's a birth of a new life. Make sure you see the coffin right next to it. If you're happy, you don't need to look very far away. Misery is just right there. If you're entertained, as Jean-Paul Sartre would say, your most faithful companion, boredom, is right next door, man. It'll knock on your door. If you want to save yourself from misery, unhappiness, and sorrow, know that every pleasure will eventually end. If you're gonna die, write your goddamn will. Because if you don't, the government will take everything. If you want to move into any new relationship, see its death at the same time. That's you writing the will. It doesn't come to you as a shock that, oh, I no longer love. Oh, I no longer like. Oh, I'm no longer having fun. Now that is a healthy individual after 20 years. Now, you may think that the Buddha is a healthy individual. That's not the case. Because he doesn't yet understand the most important part of his own teachings. You can't make anyone wise. You may be Jesus, you may be Moses, you may be the Buddha. You may have a lot of passion. You may be pregnant with intense emotions, understanding, wisdom, insights. You realize the only thing that people can offer you is their moments, tiny little moments of excitement. That's it. And then those people with excitement will come to you and they'll fool you into thinking that they're really, really inspired. They're not. Because for anyone to truly become possessor of wisdom, very much like the Buddha, they need to walk away from their parents. And you can define parents as the foundation of their ideas. You don't need to have a physical father or mother. If you have a belief system and that anchors you, that's your parent. And as long as that anchors you, you're not yet poor. You're not even a student. You're just some guy who just fancies ideas, that's it.